Welcome, everyone. My name is Ann Merchant, and I'm with the National Academy of Sciences, joined by the guy with the very cute stuff behind him.
The cutest background in the world. I am Rick Lovard. I'm the program director of the Science and Entertainment Exchange, which is a program of the National Academy of Sciences.
Exactly. And we want to welcome you to Cute Aggression. What is it, and do I have it? And we are very happy to have our featured speaker here today, Oriana Aragón, and she is the expert, the originator of cute aggression, or at least help all of us identify what that is. But of course, before we kick off, we wanted to each of us have our prescribed job. Mine is to say a little bit about what we're doing at the National Academy of Sciences. We don't actually have a portfolio on cute aggression, so I cannot point you to a bunch of reports from the Academy. But I did want to say that the presidents of the academies have released a statement this week on COP27, which kicked off, I think, last week in Egypt. And of course, COP27 is the big UN conference on climate. And the presidents in their statement acknowledged that world leaders in business, in civil society, in government have a significant role to play in the effective and equitable way that we address climate change. And they're calling on those leaders to do so. So I think Sachi has dropped in the chat the link to the president's statement. And of course, this is one of the most pressing issues of our time. And we're very happy that our presidents are using their role to call attention to that. And of course, you know, the Science and Entertainment Exchange is a program of the National Academy of Sciences, and it exists to be able to amplify our messages, but more broadly, to be able to communicate important information in science in ways that we have the opportunity to do through film and television. And so, Rick, I'll hand it to you to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so if you are a writer, producer, director, actor, storyteller, really of any kind in any format, video games, TV shows, feature films, you can call us and we will connect you with a scientist who understands the science and can put it in the context of your story. It's a free service. We've done it over 3,500 times on many projects and shows. I'm going to go ahead and recommend a movie that lots of people are recommending this week. I'm sure, Wakanda Forever. Can't wait to see it. I have not. Documentary films. If you are a STEM professional, you have an interest in the work we do, you'd be interested in communicating with storytellers, please do go ahead and put your hand up. We are always looking for new volunteers on the subject. So you can find a recording of this show after the show on the Exchange's website, or subscribe to the Science and Entertainment Exchange YouTube channel to see these events and other videos we do, like Ask a Scientist. You can also sign up for our Collider newsletter there if you want to get involved. So when the video of this event is available, everybody who RSVP'd will also get that link. I want to thank today's sponsors, Howard Hughes Medical Institute, without whose support we could not do any of these videos. Also, we get major funding from the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation. I also want to thank everybody who supported this event directly by donating when you clicked RSVP. Thank you. That goes right back into these events. We couldn't do without you. So today, in a moment, you're going to hear from a speaker. If at any point during the talk you have a question, you can go ahead and put it in the Q&A. We've disabled the chat because we use it for back-end stuff. Sorry, I know not everybody likes that, but you can speak in the Q&A. I will cobble together as many questions as humanly possible, which we will get to in the Q&A session after the talk. So I'll be managing it. If we don't get to your question, I'm sorry, it's my fault. I will get to as many as I possibly can. We always have more than we can answer. Last but not least, my rabbit hole this week, the thing that caught my attention while we were researching this event. There's an article in The Atlantic on how cuteness aggression may actually make us better caretakers. And I thought that was super interesting. And now, Anne, back to you.
Thank you very much. And of course, my rabbit hole that I discovered an article in Scientific American, I know Sachi will drop that in the chat, about our use of emojis. It turns out that one of the most frequently used emojis is the tears of joy emoji. And why we use emojis so frequently to communicate our emotions through digital communication, because it's so hard to interpret what we're actually feeling when we just type to people. So I thought that was very interesting. And the fact that tears of joy is...
I thought you were going to say it was the poop emoji.
No, apparently tears of joy, way more used. I know. Maybe you use poop. I don't know. But you also have a 3-year-old.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So we are going to now welcome Oriana to turn on her camera and unmute, and we're going to go away. And I just want to say that we are so happy to have you here, because it was on one of my morning walks. I was listening to a podcast, and they had just in casual passing had mentioned something about, weird things in science. There's something called cute aggression. And I thought, and they didn't really say much about it. So of course, I immediately went home and started looking up cute aggression, and then found out that you had been a committee member at the Academy. I was like, okay, like this is real science. I want to know more about this. So I really appreciate you accepting our invitation and for talking to our audience, because like so many things in science, as we were talking about before, when something new comes along, not everyone is quick to adopt it. They need more information, they need more data, and thanks to you, they have that data. So we're going to give it to you, Oriana, and let you explain this to our audience. And Rick and I will go away, at least visually, but we're going to be listening.
Okay, thank you, Anne. I much appreciate it. Thank you all for having me today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I put together a short presentation to give you a little bit of background about this before we go into the moderated format. So I'm going to go ahead and share screen. All right. Okay. One more second. There we go. All right, so I want to start out by thanking the National Academy of Sciences, Science and Entertainment Exchange. I think it's wonderful that you're highlighting research for the public. And I'd also like to thank my academic home, the University of Cincinnati, specifically the Carl Lindner College of Business. I'm so lucky to work with a really great team of innovative scholars who really focus on problem solving here for today's world. So among other things, I focus on the question of interpersonal communication, and in particular, expressions of emotion. And so humans are built to send and decode information through their facial expressions and their body language. And expressions of emotion are important to storytelling in particular because they communicate experiences with nuance and specificity. For example, we have signals that express when we need comfort, and expressions such as a smile to signal that we're open to interactions with others. Expressions not only give us insight into how another is feeling, but they also can create a resonance within us to feel the same as the person that we're observing. Physical expressions can be universal, that is, they can be canonical examples of certain emotions. For example, arms outreached, as you see here, are an expression of deep pride. Researchers have found that even individuals who've been blind since birth, in other words, people who've never seen this physical expression, will use this expression themselves when feeling great pride in their achievements. Even subcomponents of expressions, such as tears, will add meaning to an emotional expression. When tears are present, vulnerability has been signaled. So much of our research over the last half century has been quite orderly, meaning, for example, we found that smiles signal positive emotions and frowns signal negative emotions, and blushing signals embarrassment. So you can imagine my surprise when, as a Yale graduate student in the summer of 2011, I saw this when Leslie Bibb gave an interview on the Conan O'Brien show.
If people have babies, I'm like, oh, that baby's so cute, I just want to punch it in the face. I mean, like, your baby, like, that dog is so cute, I'm going to kick it in the head. I don't know, like, I just want to squeeze something. I want to punch your face in. Don't you want to just squeeze?
No, I don't want to squeeze and stab. No.
So that was, for me, was quite shocking, right? So the idea was, could it be possible that viewing a puppy leads to that sort of emotional response? So let's back up a little bit and define our terms as to what is cute. So cuteness is actually a set of physical features that when are present, we make an appraisal that something is cute. So these features are known as Kindeschema. It's large, wide-set eyes, rounded features like chubby cheeks, small button noses, little mouths, little chins, large foreheads, big head to body ratios. And even just being a miniature version of something can enact in us this appraisal of cuteness. And so when scientifically we manipulate Kinderschema, the baby on the left has higher Kinderschema, the baby on the right has lower Kinderschema, and we show them to individuals, people will rate the baby on the left as being more cute. And once those cute appraisals are made, the behavioral outcomes follow. So when the features are present, we make the appraisal that something's cute and we proceed to evaluate it positively. We want to protect it. We want to nurture it. We want to nourish it. And you need not have all aspects of Kinderschema to get that sort of reaction. For example, once I was viewing a photograph, much like this one, of a whale, and I thought, oh, that's nice, it's a whale. But in the second photograph, it was a zoomed out picture that showed that it was actually a baby whale next to a mommy whale. Now I thought the whale was absolutely adorable and cute, and I wanted to protect it and take care of it and make sure it had what it needed. So back to this response from Leslie Bibb, it was completely out of bounds for what in the literature we had surmised for the correspondence of particular physical expressions are going to match certain emotions. But when we asked Americans if they did this cute aggression, more than half of them said that they did. And when we checked languages around the world, we found evidence of cute aggression in most everywhere that we looked. We found phrases and words that would indicate such. So we moved to the laboratory and we started to capture in the moment responses to cuteness. We found that we could induce cute aggression by showing very cute babies and animals. And it's really important to note that people never actually reported wanting to do actual harm. Quite the opposite. People were overwhelmed with strong feelings of wanting to care for the cute being. It's just that they also reported urges to pinch, bite, and squeeze. So the question was, is this all talk or do people actually have an urge to squeeze, right? And I thought I'd go after that squeezing behavior because it was one of the most prominent behaviors reported in our research. And it showed up repeatedly when we had looked for evidence of cute aggression around the world in languages. So the problem for me was I didn't have what you would call a squeezometer, right? As a humble graduate student in psychology, I could show people cute photos and such, but I didn't have the equipment to know if people were actually squeezing. So I solved this problem by bringing participants into the lab and handing them a sheet of bubble wrap. They were told that we were conducting a study about motor movement and memory. They were told they were going to watch a slideshow and that they could pop as few or as many bubbles as they would like during that show. During the slideshows, we showed them either very cute little animals or animals that were less cute in the Kinderschema sense. So as you can see, showing cute things did actually increase this impulse to squeeze. And so in showing cute aggression, we were able to document that it's an actual real thing. And when it was happening, people were feeling intense positive emotion. And we were surprised to find that it was really quite common. But the most interesting feature about cute aggression is that the outside physical expression does not match in the normative sense what the inside is feeling, right? So this feature of not matching sets this type of expression apart from more normative expressions. And there are others. You can think tears of joy, or you can think biting into a delicious dessert and just going, oh, in pain. And it doesn't only happen for positive emotions. You can also be very nervous, feeling very anxious and find yourself laughing. So for negative emotion, dimorphous expressions can appear as well. Dimorphous expression is the term for this. It's the larger umbrella in which all these sort of mismatched expressions fall. They usually represent an intense experience. They're single valence. So it took quite a bit of research to establish that, yes, indeed, when you're crying tears of joy, it is a purely positive experience. And there's not like a latent sadness or something that we're even not aware of. It's actually can be a single valence of emotion. Just like when you witness cute aggression, people are feeling wholly positive about the little object that they're showing aggression for. So it's a single valence of emotion. There are individual differences. Some people do this and some people don't. And the person who is likely to, pinch the baby's cheek is also likely to cry when they receive the award. So it does cluster within person. And it's super reliant on context. So if you think about it, if the outside doesn't really match what's going on the inside, you're almost completely reliant on the context to understand what is going on. Here's an example for you. These two women both look as though something really horrible is happening. But when you look at the broader context, you can see in one case, there's a positive, there's like some sort of concert going on, and the other is a negative scenario. Here is my Federer test. So Federer is a great dimorphous expressor. Here we have him in different moments in his career when he's photographed on the court. And I'll give you just a moment to try to figure out which ones are positive and which are negative. And there it is. So these expressions are not distinguishable so far as we can tell from positive or negative situations. So it really is just this mismatch between what's going on the outside, what's going on the inside. So if we think about the normative way that people express positivity, it's usually smiles, right? Smiles can communicate positivity and even intense positivity. But these expressions as well can communicate. So these are two really famous babies. You've seen them probably a lot on the internet. The one on the left is cheering on his hockey team, and the one on the right is crying tears of joy every time his mommy sings him a song. And so our questions are, why? Why is this happening? So to investigate this, I studied two expressions in particular, one that looks a lot like aggression, you'll see on the left side of your screen, and the other one that looks a lot like sadness. It can be that all three of these facial expressions signal exactly the same thing, but then there would be no reason for three signals, right? So if all three of these represent positivity, why would we have all three when smiles could just suffice? So the first question before me was, as I began the work, was to identify what exactly these expressions communicate. So I've looked at these expressions across a variety of scenarios, such as contexts of a gorgeous nature scene, being in awe, or being in the presence of cute little beings, like a basket of puppies. In the context of a windfall, like winning the lottery or achieving lifelong goals, or being reunited with family, or even seeing one's favorite celebrity. Across those different types of scenarios, the findings have always been consistent. In other words, across contexts that you would think produce very different, I'll say, flavors of emotion, and even cross-culturally, these expressions can and do signal very specific information. So when I show people these expressions and I put them in either positive or negative contexts, here's what they signal. These expressions, the anger expression and the sadness expression, signal above and beyond what a smile will signal. So the appetitive expression, the anger type expression, signals an appetitive orientation of wanting to go, wanting to move, wanting to accelerate. On the other hand, the expression that looks more like sadness or crying really does instead signal that that person wants to pause. They want to stop for a moment. They want to be still. And this is communicated regardless if it's situated in a positive or negative scenario. When we brought people into the lab and we studied their electrodermal activity, in other words, looking at their brain waves, we looked to see if we could see differences between this sort of anger expression and this sadness expression. And what we did find is we did find distinct signatures when people were looking at an appetitive expression, an angry style expression. Those signatures differed from when they were looking at a consummatory expression or a sadness expression. So there were distinct patterns. And that was regardless if it was in a positive or negative situation. So there's something very special about this information that's being communicated. And we found these patterns when they observed. So this is a tennis player, Victoria Azarenka, when they observed Victoria Azarenka expressing this way, and also when they talked about their own experiences when they had an expression such as this. And that indicates some sort of resonance going on. And even these brainwaves, these differences in patterns, were able to predict whether that participant who came to the lab would prefer a body lotion that was energizing versus a body lotion that was calming and soothing, dependent on whether or not they had just been thinking about an appetitive experience versus a consummatory experience. As you can guess, appetitive experience was more associated with wanting that energizing body lotion, and the consummatory more so with having that calming or soothing body lotion. And so bringing this back to cute aggression, cute aggression is the picture on the left, where somebody sees something cute and they clench their fist and they're, oh, I want to squeeze it. And there's actually a second expression that we use when we see cuteness, and that's cute sadness. And that's usually a pronounced pout, and it's accompanied by something like a aw. And when we ask participants, what is it that you think this person wants to do? How do they want to interact with the baby that they're near? People will say, the person with the acute aggression expression wants to rev up that baby, wants to go touch it and get close to it. But the person who does the pouty sort of cute sadness, this person is more likely to want to just maybe calm the baby or sit back and admire the baby, maybe not even touch the baby. So you can see that it's sending very different signals. So when we think about how these signals evolved, how we need to cooperate with one another socially, how we need to be able to coordinate efforts, it makes sense that we have specific signals that help us to understand how each other is feeling and how we're going to interact. And so, in short, these expressions do represent and communicate very distinct, nuanced things. They do resonate within people. They provide nuance to situations, and they even provide character information. So people will say at times, that is the type of person who, when they see these expressions. So it can even taint the way that people view others. I want to say thank you again to the Science and Entertainment Exchange, and again to the University of Cincinnati. I'm going to stop sharing.
So what's next? What's the next study you're working on now?
What's the next thing? I am working on understanding other expressions, dimorphous expressions. So I'm particularly interested in the look of pain for pleasure. And I'm also interested in the look of disgust for approval. So if you can think of hearing like a fantastic jazz riff and just sort of that disgust look. They seem to go hand in hand. So disgust can be used for approval, kind of like not bad, and there's this disgust feature that comes out. So that's sort of where I'm probing now. And if my hypotheses are true, there should be distinct signals sent by each different expression.
Huh. Okay, and I want to encourage everybody to go ahead and jump in with questions. They're already starting to form on the Q&A feed. And jump right in. Susanna wants to know, do you have any references or maybe some reading for people who want to know more about this?
Oh yeah, I have a CV full of it. I didn't, can I provide that information after
Sure.
the show? Yeah, there's quite a bit published articles in psychological science, cognition and emotion, motivation and emotion. I wrote a piece for Scientific American. So they're out there, but I'm happy to share those resources. Absolutely.
So Jennifer asks, she loves bubble wrap, loves to pop every bubble. And are you the first to use bubble wrap? Is this a common device in study?
It's hilarious. No, nobody uses bubble wrap. It was the first time I presented it at like a professional setting. I traveled to Princeton and I'm presenting this research, and I had to like show the distribution of bubble popping scores, and the audience was in a roar of laughter because it's just not a typical dependent variable. It's not the typical thing that we use to measure. But like I said, I was sort of a humble grad student wondering, how am I going to know whether or not they squeeze? And I ran to engineering, and they could put in sensors, but then to digitize them was going to be some greater effort. And yeah, so bubbles was unusual, and there is an individual difference to how much people like to pop bubbles. We did measure that when we did our science experiment. We did dutifully measure people's individual differences, and yeah, some people do and some people don't pop bubbles, or more or less.
Does this mean your job at one time was to actually make sure every bubble was intact on a sheet of bubble wrap before you handed it to a subject?
Right. And then when I got it back, I sat there with a Sharpie, and for each one on the back side, I put an X for each bubble, because I thought, well, if I put them in the file cabinet, they might like get pressure on them and bubble. So yeah, it was really unusual. I remember my advisor was just like, what is Oriana doing? As I was running around with bubble wrap. But yeah, it worked, and it was a good way to figure that out.
So Jory Lynn would like to know, do we have any understanding of what inhibits people from acting out in acute aggression?
Oh, that's a really great question, because people do the squeezing. You will see them, but it's gentle, even though their impulse is much stronger than what they actually do. So there's a push and pull there within the individual who's displaying acute aggression. I think that, obviously it wins out that you don't want to do any harm. You want to be as gentle as possible. There is definitely a tension between these two things. And individuals will report that tension, like, I just want to squeeze it, and they can't. And then that's when you get this like really strong. In fact, that was our first idea. We were like, maybe they're just frustrated that they can't show it as strong of a love as they want to. So we brought people into the lab and we did another experiment where we had them look at really cute photos, but we handed them a little soft pillow that I had made. Like, it was really fluffy and really soft, and it was small. You could squeeze it if you wanted to. Actually, that's what I was trying to get the sensor put into. You could squeeze it if you wanted to. So I thought, okay, well, if we give them something to squeeze, if they can just squeeze the heck out of, that when they see the cute pictures, they're going to be relieved of this like tension, But no, that wasn't the case at all. They weren't relieved of the tension. They still showed cute aggression, and it actually just exacerbated it. So no, it's a battle that we must fight. For those who feel cute aggression and want to just squeeze, that it's something that they have to regulate.
So Nancy is wishing you a happy birthday.
Thank you.
And Richard wants to know if hugs and squeezes are the same.
Oh, yeah, there can be adult versions. So actually, some of the international press has really picked up on this, and the idea of, wanting to bite your intimate partner, and playful love biting. Why do you want to bite them? And I do think that it's sort of a continuation. You're just there's a very strong positive feeling, but you are manifesting in this sort of like aggressive. It's just another dimorphous expression. It's not cute aggression. It's romantic partner aggression, but not in the real sense. Not. It's different than what's being shown on the outside, and that's what really makes it so interesting.
So Anne wants to know about situations where we don't have access to facial expressions. Is this a reason maybe that social media communication can sort of cause some strange outcomes?
Yeah. And in fact, I was contacted by, because I work on expression, I was contacted by doctors at the beginning of the pandemic, and they were wondering, what can we do? Because we're going to be all messed up, and we want to be able to communicate with our patients in a way that they can understand that we care about them. We want to be able to, and we can't communicate everything in our faces. So yes, missing out on the nonverbal facial and bodily postures can really change how you interpret another's intentions, motivations, emotions. It can really change things dramatically. And I think that's one of the reasons why we do have emojis, right? Because then we can sort of take that, add it into the text, and try to add that nonverbal information. It's funny, when I started this, when some of the bigger publications started to hit, and the press was coming around asking, it was really funny because that tears of joy emoji I was on constantly. I think it was 2015. I was on constantly talking about tears of joy, constantly talking about it. And that next year, the tears of joy emoji was the word of the year for the dictionary, right? And a lot of the reporters were sending me emails saying, you did this, with your one-man show of talking about tears of joy so much, you brought this about. But yeah, I think the emojis are there to help us with that. Yeah, definitely.
So we have a few people here asking about whether or not there's evolutionary advantage to having this.
Well, I think the advantage of making it very clear how you want to interact, right? Especially when you're talking about babies. We've always sort of community raised. It's very hard to have just one person caretaking a human infant. Human infants need constant care for years. And so If others are interacting with your baby, I can see a protective mother needing to know how someone's going to interact with their baby. So I could see it being very advantageous to be able to really communicate how you want to interact with that baby. And, all of these studies that I didn't really talk about it a lot in the PowerPoint presentation, but the information that's conveyed through a smile alone doesn't give any information. So when I have someone, just smiling and I say, do they want to approach or they want to stay back? People are like, oh, I don't know. But you do the cute aggression or you do the cute sadness. And they're like, oh yeah, I know what that person wants to do with this baby, right? They get a really strong feel for it. So, in that way, it's advantageous. Yeah, because now you can coordinate behaviors. You can tell people, no, why don't you stay back if that's not what you want. I think in the United States that we don't as much do the cute aggression for unfamiliar babies because it violates some social norms. I think the more prominent and the more common expression is that cute sadness where people go, oh, that's the more commonly seen, the more commonly reported by people when we talk to them. So yeah, I can see either one being really advantageous to be able to do.
So I'm not sure how to pronounce this, but REGF is asking about the dark side of cuteness aggression. How do you contain these overwhelming desires to act on cuteness aggression?
Well, other than what we sort of already talked about with that sort of the push and pull of like, you really don't want to hurt. I think that all of it comes from a place of really being overwhelmed with positive emotions for the little entity. And so I think that helps keep people in line. Some of the earliest research that we did showed that when individuals do express this way, with that cute aggression burst, that they actually come down off of that really high positive experience a little bit better. In other words, come back to homeostasis a little bit better than people who don't do it. So it could be in part that getting that little burst out in your cute aggression does help you to regulate your emotions so you can come back to a more steady place where you can better caretake in the end. And that's what that Atlantic article was talking about. I remember that interview. They're sort of like, well, it might help us to regulate our emotions, and that way we can be better caretakers.
So MB wants to know some tips for those people dealing with unwanted cute aggression in their general direction.
Right, that's a good one. As an adult receiving cute aggression, or as someone protecting a baby, I'm not sure. Yeah, just setting those boundaries. I can see that being an awkward situation, especially when you have someone that's so vocal. I mean, look at Leslie Bibb. I don't think that she's unusual. And in fact, we've tweeted back and forth. I told her, don't worry, it's normal. She's like, oh, thank God. Yeah. No, let's keep it back.
My wife's in her third trimester, and the number of strangers who want to touch her belly is absurd.
Yeah.
So is there a genetic component for people who have cute aggression and people who do not?
Not that we know of. We haven't investigated genetics. I think that there's a familial thing in that individuals might learn that behavior from others. So they see others do it in their family, their mom or their grandma or their dad does it. It's possible that they might also sort of express that way because they've learned to express that way when they're having those types of feelings. But no, we haven't done any. I'm not saying it's not there. I'm not saying it is there. We just haven't checked.
So Ray has more of a comment than a question, but it'd be interesting to hear your input on this. He says, I can see your work having a huge impact on artificial intelligence, AIs being able to say whether a face is happy or sad. Is this an area that you're working in? And also when they're trying to get out of the uncanny valley and make AIs more realistic, I'm wondering, is this an area that you're working in at all?
Yeah, I'm actually preparing a grant that looks at AI that's used for interpretation. So it really, anything that could jeopardize an individual's standing in a community because it's been misread by an AI entity is scary to me. So, you can go, yes, when you nailed it, when you did something good, when you're in that shop and you found the computer you wanted to buy, you're like, yeah, it's here, right? And if a computer is grabbing that facial information and just coding that as an aggression, that's not good, right? And so I think that there's and these are really common. In fact, in some of our polling, it looks like individuals will express for like pride or accomplishment or finding something like for a positive thing more than negative. And I can count the number of times in my life that I've negatively aggressed on one hand, right? But I can't count the number of times I said nailed it, because I'm that type of person who uses that sort of expression. So yes, I am worried about that. In uncanny valley, you would almost think that adding in some of this for flavor could help to repair some of that uncanny sort of part of the uncanny valley, is that it's so close, but it's still missing that one element, and this could maybe bridge that. But more exciting to me is for public good is to understand how AI entities are interpreting this stuff, so that we don't get people labeled in a certain way that's not appropriate, especially as we gather more and more data on one another. Another sort of public policy angle that I think is really important is, we see riots after teams win games and people get hurt, and it's something about that resonance feature that we keep finding in our research, that you can resonate off of other people and sort of spread it. It's almost like contagion. And I think about that, and when we have those situations where we have crowds of people that begin to rage upon happiness, joy of winning, and how that amplifies maybe through resonance and creates these situations where we have people actually getting hurt or in danger from it. So I think that's interesting too.
Quick point of order for anyone who doesn't know what the uncanny valley is. If you've seen Tom Hanks's dead eyes in the Polar Express, it's when a character is close to being realistic and misses the mark. So our very own Sachi and Jennifer Chow, I'm going to put two questions together. Jennifer wants to know if these expressions are learned socially or occur biologically. And Sachi is wondering about how different cultures or different countries might have different ways of expressing this. So how much of this, I guess, is embedded in us, as far as you can tell? I know you were showing some examples of very early, like infants and people, you said blind people, that kind of stuff. And how much do you think is socially constructed?
Oh, that's always in the nature nurture. That's a tough one. There are cultural influences. I know that there are, because we can find cultural differences. So when we look at cute aggression, so like aggression type displays when we're confronted with cuteness, when we look at South Korea, we see overall as a culture, they have more cute aggression than we do here in the United States. So just the fact that there are differences between these two cultures can tell you right there that, that there's an influence beyond, right, just innate. And then it's funny, you see littles doing it. Those babies were really little. The one with the I could see maybe having learned that from a mom or dad even at that young age. But the crying one, you should look it up if you haven't seen it yet. It's pretty convincing. That's a pretty solid tears of joy for this baby, and it looks like a pre-verbal baby. So I think that would be a harder one that you might have seen parents doing and mimicking. We don't know exactly what percentages for each, but we think there's contributions on both sides.
So Jory Lynn wants to know, for people who are there people who can't regulate these impulses properly, and does this exhibit itself in any psychological disorders that you're aware of?
There are, especially on the negative side, it seems like there are some expressions that people have a really hard time controlling. So I'm working with some clinicians, and we talk about how patients, when they're very distraught and they're talking about what's going on in their lives, that you'll get spontaneous smiling. And they'll be quick to say, I'm not happy. I don't think this is good, but they'll still keep smiling. And they'll say, I don't know why it's there. And they get really frustrated with it. And so there are some people who smile spontaneously. A good number, is close to a third when we started looking into it, that smile or even chuckle or laugh when something really devastating has happened, like being told someone died or, big stuff. They'll have this response, and then they'll feel not only the negativity of the situation, but then a secondary sort of shame for having presented this way. So it can exacerbate already bad feelings when you can't control it. On the positive side, I haven't recorded yet people saying, especially with the cuteness one, it turns very playful. I haven't had anyone say, no, really, I can't stop it. Not in a real sense. I'm trying to think if there's any other instances of tears of joy are very difficult to control once they start flowing. They're there. So I think there are some differences from expression to expression. So I wouldn't want to make a blanket statement. But no, I haven't had aggression becoming an actual problem, other than maybe annoying someone who doesn't do cute aggression and thinks it's kind of weird.
So you've had a couple of examples of this behavior. Laura wants to know about the actual urge to absorb someone else or something else into yourself as acute aggression.
I heard that a lot when I first started working on this. And some people do report that as part of the essence of wanting to just like combine with that, whatever it is. But we don't have any data that would speak to that. But it is something I've heard a few times where people have talked about that as being part of it. In any case, I looked at more, what is the expression? What is it communicating? Because I'm very interested in how we interpersonally communicate. And so for me, really focusing on that communication aspect, regardless if it was about sort of incorporating yourself into another or another into you, you're still sort of communicating this, like, I want to go and get that entity. I'm approaching, I'm on my way to get it.
So Georgi is interested in cute aggression at the work or in the workplace with coworkers, different from those at home or in your personal life, and if so, how?
I can see this really being a culturally shaped, sort of schema shaped behavior, right? So if you're in the office and you're with colleagues and it's a more formal tone, I could see it being sort of negative to be overly expressive in this way, just as many different types of expressions might be inappropriate for the workplace or less well received, I'll say it that way. But I can see at home where you're with people, I know that cute aggression happens more frequently in the United States anyhow, when you're with people that you know, when you're with people that you're comfortable with. And so it's less likely to happen where you actually go up to strangers and do this, because it's asking a lot of the people who are receiving that, let alone the babies who are receiving it.
So Kenneth, I'm not sure if I understand your second question, so if you could rephrase it, that would be great. But the first question Kenneth asks is, are endorphins involved that you know of in acute aggressions?
So that appetitive is part of the reward system. So it's not exactly, but we are looking at, they're the dopaminergic and the serotonergic systems of wanting and liking. So the reward system has two pieces to it. This is Berridge's work, where there's the wanting, that's sort of the appetitive of wanting to go out and seek. And I think that's what this acute aggression is signaling. So I do think, and also with the brainwave work that we've done, it looks like it's somehow connected into that reward system. So yes, in a way, but not necessarily in endorphins. It could be that it gets you on then that system. So from the whole process, but that hasn't been studied yet.
So this is about a Rick question. We're doing a series here at the Exchange that's going to be coming out pretty soon. The first episode is about scientists with interesting backstories. And in researching this event, you have a pretty interesting backstory, and I'm not sure how much you'd feel comfortable sharing, but can you tell a few people, I think you came to that seat that you're sitting in right now in this amazing work in kind of an unusual path. Would you mind talking a little bit about your path?
Okay, let's see. So, so I'm a San Diego native. I was there till I was 40. I didn't have the opportunity to go to college when I was young. I didn't manage to put together a small business, and I worked and lived there. But I really felt like I could do something better with my life. I could help others, impact others in a way that was more meaningful than what I was doing in my business. So yeah, so I went to school. I started school in my mid to late 30s, and I didn't finish grad school till I was 45. I'm not talking anymore about dates after that, but I went on to do a postdoc and then work at Clemson. I'm so grateful to be here at the University of Cincinnati. It's really a fabulous place to live and work. But yeah, no, I was a single mom through all of school, and it was an unusual, being re-entry, starting your education in your mid-30s. All of that made me sort of an odd duck out. I have to say, though, that the people that I met along the way were really great about making sure I always felt included, and making sure that I was always heard as well as everyone else. So it was that part was good. I had a lot of people that lifted me up, for sure.
So what was your experience like when you started introducing these new concepts into sort of the scientific community, as it were? Did you have any trouble with that? Were people immediately supportive of your results?
At first, it wasn't received at all. So it was journal rejection after journal rejection. So I just kept collecting data and showing it this way and showing it that way and showing it that way. And there it is again. And, I kept, I'm not exactly sure how many studies went into the very first paper that got published, but I saw the Leslie Bibb interview in 2011. I started hot and heavy on that topic. Presenting it at a conference by January 2012. I already had data on numerous studies because I was like, this is here. This I can see it. It's here. And it took me from then until 2015 to get my first publication on it. And that a lot has to do with there was this sort of dogmatic view that, there's one corresponding facial expression for every emotion, and that we have this, correspondence. And to say that someone's feeling positive and they're going, that doesn't make any sense. So it really was about breaking through that theory that was really holding emotion research. And now it's like, oh yeah, people are like, oh yeah, it's no big deal. But at the time, and I know it's only 7 years ago, but at the time it really was busting through some walls. I just collected so much data, they couldn't deny me. They had to, there was just so much evidence that it had to get published at some point.
As a father of a young child, another one to come, I'm just struck by your story, both what you said about your work and what you said about getting to the point where you could even do the work. That your story has a lot of grit. And I know you have your own kids. What have you done to sort of instill your own sense of grit into your kids? And where do you think that sort of stick-to-itiveness and this incredible story you have to just sort of keep going through all of that? Anyway, where do you think that comes from? And do you have any advice for parents or people who are trying to instill grit in others?
Yeah, I'd say a lot of who I am is my father, and he's the one who taught me how to think about the world. And he was in a wheelchair with muscular dystrophy all my life, and it didn't matter what had to be done. He got it done. He raised us from the seat of a wheelchair. My mom passed away. He took care of us, and it's all due to him. You don't even need someone to tell you to keep at it when you have someone like him in the world, doing good every day and keeping at it and doing the right things. I mean, he just was an amazing person. I lost him in 2017, but just seeing him was what it was, taught me so much. And luckily, my son was able to have, many years with my father as well. And so I feel like he's definitely, we just know better, when it comes to, giving up. We're like, no, we know better. We've seen what it can look like when somebody perseveres, and we're doing that. So he's really the inspiration.
Wow, sounds amazing.
Yeah.
So Adam wants to know if loneliness can change the behavior or impacts in the response that people have. Are lonely people more likely to respond with cute aggression or not?
That's a really good question. So, cute aggression comes about when emotions are intense. So you have to think about, is there something about loneliness that make people's emotions more intense? So if people are lonely and they also become slightly depressed, then that actually decreases the strength of emotions that are felt. But if they're lonely and they're craving human interaction, it could increase the emotions that they're felt. So you won't get these sort of like cute sadness or cute aggression unless an individual is pretty deeply moved. It doesn't usually happen when people are just, that's all right, I'm going to, no, they don't do that. If loneliness itself could increase the emotional impact of encountering a cute little being, then yes, in that way. But a direct link between the two, like loneliness causes, I don't necessarily see that. No.
And what about the implications around misreading these emotional cues in cute aggression?
Yeah. That's a big one. That's a big one. So a lot of times when people express dimorphously, they'll vocalize how they actually feel because they're worried about this being misinterpreted, because it can be a really big social faux pas, right, to be misinterpreted in any of these dimorphous expressions. Kirsten Bell, the actress, she dimorphously expresses in very, very extreme ways. And when she does, she'll like cry happy tears, or she's in love with sloths. So if you tell her there's a sloth nearby, she'll start crying and convulsing. She gets really excited. But for her, you'll see it's great because it's somebody who dimorphously expresses, and then there's tons of video of her doing it, right? Because she's a celebrity. But she'll say, oh, no, these are happy tears. These are happy. So she's crying. I'm happy. So she'll try to express what she's actually feeling. And I think it's just that we know intuitively that the outside doesn't look like how the inside is feeling. And so that's something that you'll hear quite frequently. People will explicitly state how they feel on the inside to be sure that they're not misread.
Sorry, my mute button was sticky. I had the Ann Merchant problem. So Brian wants to know, so I know you talked a little bit about this whole absorption thing, but what about in particular eating, like just wanting to eat something up that you like a baby? What's your sort of opinion on all that?
Yeah, because eating is one of those things that popped up right away. Want to eat you up, so good to eat. It's in languages around the world. The eating part is there. Nibbling on you. It's part of the bite too. So we did, we thought about that back when we very first were looking at it. Everything was on the table. Everything was on the table of whether or not you actually, I think it's all playful, and the eating I think is in line with that whole sort of absorbing that other into the self. So I think that they're very similar and sort of I think that some people do feel this sentiment, and again I focused more so on like, what does the expression communicate? What does it mean? How does it feel when you're feeling it? What are the things that are going on? What's the universal part of this that we can use to sort of decode what's going on? So when storytellers are thinking about how to communicate something very specific, I think about how powerful these expressions can be in being so precise about a feeling, and sometimes when I'm going a little off that question, but sometimes when I watch movies and I see actors do it, I see the yes, for nailed it, or I see tears of joy, and I don't know if it's the screenwriter's choice or if it's the actor's choice because I'm not privy to the behind the scenes, but when it's there, it can be so, resonant and so moving and so precise to know how that individual is feeling. So I think it's a really helpful tool. But yeah, again, I focused on the tool, and then not necessarily as much on that sentiment, other than they're feeling very strong positive emotions.
My colleague Courtney mentions that it reminds her of the line from the book, "Where the wild things are, I'll eat you up, I love you so." We've got 2 questions. We've got time for 1 answer probably. So I'm going to throw both of them at you, and you can pick one. One is acute aggression in response to awe or wonder. Have you seen that? And then the other question is, does it come into effect at all in the realm of the humble brag?
Oh, okay. Yes, on awe. We can see that aggressive expression, but more so with awe, because the situation itself is a little more calm usually. Usually you're getting more of a tear, that kind of a thing. And then the humble brag. So the humble brag, so that brings up a really great point. Amorphous expressions are spontaneous. They come about not in service of looking a certain way, not in service of anything in particular. They just spontaneously seem to come out, and that's what makes them extremely interesting. So the humble brag is more of a strategic, it's a strategy of like, okay, well, this is how I'm going to ingratiate myself in this way. So that's a little bit different flavor. Whereas the acute aggression or crying tears of joy, or or looking disgusted when you think something's awesome, those things are all spontaneous. They're spontaneous.
Maybe different parts of the brain even.
Yeah, I would imagine.
So there's Anne coming back. That means we're out of time. We got to as many questions as we could. Thank you. You were really, really concise, and I really appreciate that, because we did get to a bunch of the questions today. So thank you.
Exactly. We benefit from somebody who has that concise way of answering, because that means we roll through them. So thank you, Oriana. It really was a great event, and I learned a lot, which I always think is a perk of my job.
Oh, great. Glad to hear it.
And so, Rick, you're going to tell us what's coming in December, right? Coming attractions.
Of course I am. And of course I lost my note. And do you have it in front of you right now?
Yes, I do know that we're looking at December 14th, and our friends at the GAO, and it sounds like, government accounting office. Oh, I don't know. But they have something called the Justice League, because they're also responsible for Homeland Security and for a lot of things that fall under accounting for different things. So their Justice League folks are going to come in and talk to us about some things that they're doing there. We actually have a meeting with them next week to talk about the specifics. So we'll be sure to put that in your inbox in an invitation and get those specifics to you when Sachi is ready for that. So we hope you come back to us on December 14th when we have those details.
I want to thank Ameche, Sachi, Jeff, and Courtney, without whose help we could not do these events. So thank you guys. All right. See you after Thanksgiving.
Bye.
Bye.